I said, all we have to do is flood the zone. Every day we hit them with 3 things. They'll bite on one and we'll get all of our stuff done. Bang, bang, bang. These guys will never be able to recover.
That was Steve Bannon in 2019 explaining how right-wing MAGA lunatics will take over the U.S. federal government and destabilize the already difficult task of running a massive country like the United States. Make no mistake, Trump is waging political war in America from within. He's determined to seize absolute control of the government functions as quickly as possible, and he doesn't care what gets broken or how many people suffer. Hello and welcome back to the Difficult Opinions podcast. I'm Alan, and today on the pod, I'm going to talk to you about the overload of activity Trump is forcing on the United States government and the people it takes care of. So Trump and Bannon and the Project 2025 people, they're already trying to hammer the media, the courts, the administrative agencies. They're doing their best to overwhelm the public's capacity for change. Even his MAGA supporters can't keep up with the onslaught of executive orders. I think at this point it's over 60 or 70. These press briefings, which are chaotic, filled with lies, the tweets, the posts on Truth Social, and the speeches Trump White House produces every day. It's just designed to be a huge overload of information, so no person can really keep track of it. Online, I've started to see now news outlets have teams of people that are tracking these different things that are happening each day, and they're publishing them in kind of a diary format. I'd love to see a database somehow, but it's good that they're being published in any case. I went through and I had a look at all of the executive orders. And here's a list of the things Trump has tried to break as the recording of this podcast on February 24th. It's a month after he has been inaugurated, and so we have a lot to go over. It's a long list. I counted 47 items that are designed to break the backs of progressives and liberals and the minority Democratic Party in Congress. Nearly one major policy shift per day has happened since Trump was sworn in as president. Bear with me. It's a lot, but documenting Trump's bad deeds and crimes are incredibly important to do. We have to get this on the record and get it out there so people know what's going on. So here we go. He started efforts to dismantle USAID and halt all foreign social programs. He mismanaged California's water supply that raised flood concerns in local areas. He's going to, quote, turn on the water, and he let some water loose from a high reservoir that's meant for summertime irrigation of crops. He just let this water out for some reason. This had to do with the firefighting capabilities and the idea that there was no water for firefighting. He launched an investigation into NPR and PBS by the FCC. These are the broadcast channels, the public news and radio channels, because they criticize Trump frequently, and he's suggesting they are doing advertising when they should not be doing advertising because they're a public outlet. What they do is they explain to their listeners who their donation partners are. This is not advertising. Elon Musk was given access to the Treasury's payment system. We've all heard that. If you've been not living under a rock in the last 3 weeks, he got together his several 20-something computer programmers, and somehow they're in there, taking the data and copying it. There's some rumors that they are using this data to train this Grok AI. I don't know if that's true. It sounds like it would be true, but I don't know. There's been court cases already about this, that judges have intervened and said they needs to explain itself. So it's highly in flux right now. It's just a huge shit show. The fact that Elon Musk is allowed to run into the government agencies, start taking data and doing whatever anyone knows with it. Trump also imposed new tariffs on imports from Mexico and Canada and China. Then he paused them for a month, and then he added new ones on steel and aluminum. And then he let the 10% Chinese tariffs go through while pausing like the Canadian and Mexico tariffs. It's, again, madness. It has no clear strategy there. He's prohibited the cultural observances of Black History Month in federal agencies. He's intent to dismantle the education department via executive order. He does not really have any idea about why that needs to be done. There's just a few things that the education department does at the federal level that's important. States, they set education policy for the students in those states. The federal government does not. The education department works on discrimination topics and making sure people aren't discriminated against. And so the MAGA people want to have that killed, obviously. They're restructuring the media access at the Pentagon facilities. They've given the right-wing outlets, I think 8 different ones, office space in the Pentagon, and kicked out all of the mainstream media. Now, I'm no mainstream media fan, but organizations like the Associated Press and Reuters and, the big newspapers and television outlets, they serve a function. I mean, they can always improve and get better and serve the people, with more clear information, but they're very important still, nonetheless, to be there as simply as documenting what's happening, independent of their editorial perspectives. Preparations are now underway to house 30,000 migrants at Guantanamo Bay in Cuba. I posted a map on Blue Sky showing how big a camp has to be to hold 30,000 people. If you just go to bluesky.com and you look up refugee camp under some of my posts, you will see that these are huge city-sized installations. And currently in Guantanamo Bay, the detainees there are housed in small little huts and buildings with small outdoor areas for exercise. And there's lots of, administration buildings that are small and spread out. Nothing like that is going to house 30,000 people because you need 20,000 people to manage 30,000 people to feed them and to take care of them. These are not prisoners, so to speak. So I think this is completely terrible in every way. He ended deportation protections for 300,000 Venezuelans. This is, again, it's a bait and switch. The government says, we're going to help you. We're going to give you protection so you don't have to go back to be persecuted. And then because they're simply not rich white men, Donald Trump is removing their protection. So this is yet to be played out. We don't know how this is going to happen, the return of these people. So to be determined. He removed the Centers for Disease Control guidelines for STIs. This is sexually transmitted infections. This is a resource people need. It's no longer there. It's not possible to access anymore. He fired all of the prosecutors in the government, in the DOJ, that took part in the January 6 prosecutions, and he demanded the list of FBI agents that were participating undercover in that riot. This was not given, but he also nominated Kash Patel and now Dan Bongino, the right-wing podcaster, to be the head of the FBI and the deputy of the FBI. So I'm sure those lists are going to come soon enough. And those people who were undercover agents will be exposed and also fired. He's talked about funding threats for South Africa. No more South Africa aid because white landowners are getting checked on what they can do with their land there. And so this is a completely internal matter. I don't even understand it completely. I read through it a little bit. It has to do with land policy. This has nothing to do with the United States. Clearly, it's coming from Elon Musk. There's no doubt about that. He's South African and his family is there. His brother, Kimball, is also South African and he's a big deal here in the U.S. So this is clearly an influence or a giveaway to Musk. He eliminated the IRS free tax filing program. This is a software application online where people who have simple tax returns can go on and, fill out their tax information and either get a refund or, just provide the government with that information for free. Otherwise, they will have to spend up to $80 to do this with an agency or some other software package like TurboTax or something like this. This is completely ridiculous. I live in Germany and they have a system here called Elster. You can sign up for Elster. You can file all of your business and personal taxes of every different kind and dimension for free online. There are paid services and many people here do use a preparer for their work, but that's a personal choice when you have a complicated tax return. Someone who just makes YouTube videos doesn't need that and they can just go online and fill that out if they need to. So This great service from the federal government has now been closed because money. Okay, he's been blaming the recent spate of airline crashes on DEI, as you might imagine. There were firings of different managers in the Federal Aviation Administration, as well as some of the air traffic controllers were let go or offered early retirement, I guess you might say, or like a buyout of their contract, which it's not clear that's even legal, but some people took this. He dismissed all the DOJ employees that were participating in former legal actions against himself, Donald Trump. All of those court cases about the documents case and about the election fraud case, all of those prosecutors and support people that were part of that were fired. Again, completely authoritarian. One of the worst things I've heard now in weeks is this Gaza redevelopment plan. I wrote a blog post today you might want to check out about the unpopularity of things like this. Nobody wants to see this Gaza area bulldozed and have 2 million people displaced against their will so Donald Trump and America can build whatever condos or housing. He called it, quote, the Mediterranean Riviera. I don't understand why he would do that. No one has been referring to, quote, the Riviera in America since the 1950s. I would bet most people who live in the United States could not point to the French Riviera on a map. I don't know. This is very old style thinking. It's his crazy ideas about what is real and what isn't real. No one is thinking about luxury condominiums on the beach where Gaza is. There's something like 50 million tons of debris. There's bodies that haven't been recovered yet. There's collapsed tunnels. There's all sorts of unexploded bombs and chemicals to be picked up. This is a decade of redevelopment. Nobody wants to see that. They want the Palestinian people to be returned to their home and to somehow live together in that area, whether it's a 1 or 2 state solution. I don't really have an opinion on that here, but this is a normal course of action that should be discussed and should be set, not get out and I'm going to build condos there. This is completely outrageous, but this is what we get. He put a pause on the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. So foreign people, whether it's private citizens or government officials, send a bribe to him or another government person or even a private citizen. They're not going to be seeking to do any prosecutions. They're not actually looking at this. There's effectively a pause on the law that governs this activity. I'm not sure you can pause a law. I haven't heard that before. It's a Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. Act is, I guess, as people know, it's another name for law, right? But putting a pause on a law, that doesn't seem like something you could do. But he's done this. He's flooded the zone with all of this overload of information, things like the Panama Canal, and that China is controlling it, and he has to take it back, and we never should have given it away. We've heard these things in the news. It comes in one day, and then it sticks around for a day or two, and then the next thing you know, there's 5 new things. And people forget the Panama Canal is one of the most crucial links for shipping goods, food, military vessels, like everything between the Pacific and the Atlantic Oceans. Going down southern tip of South America and going back up, and this is not what a modern shipping system needs. There's the Panama Canal. It's updated. It's not run by China. No one is getting screwed. It just costs a lot of money to go through there. And just because, 100 years ago, the United States helped build it or did build it or somehow financed the building of it doesn't mean that we should be forever owning it, controlling it, or getting free use of it. It's just dumb and outrageous. And actually, no one's asking for this. There is no one that's saying, there's no shipping company that's saying, damn, it's too expensive. I want it to be free. The United States military is not saying, hey, I want my aircraft carrier to be able to go through here for free. Like none of that stuff is happening. This is all something that was created in Donald Trump's brain. And typically that's a problem. Just a quick reminder that my work is supported by you, the listener. Please follow or subscribe to the podcast and help me spread the reach of this show to other listeners. And if you want to help this channel financially, go buy a t-shirt at the merch store. Details are below. Yeah, so he shut down the Consumer Financial Protections Bureau. This was set up some years ago, and the entire point of this enterprise is to make sure banks and financial institutions aren't defrauding its customers, which, as you might imagine, happens all the time. Whether it's misstating loan application details or somehow charging you more for something, or I don't know, giving you illegal terms on a loan, or charging you fees on something you're not allowed to be charged fees on. All of that kind of stuff is just blatant corruption that comes from financial institutions all the time. This is a constant happening, and this organization was tasked with holding these companies accountable when this kind of fraud and abuse come to light, and it's now been closed. I think it was closed primarily because it was the brainchild of Elizabeth Warren, who, as people might know, is a Democratic senator and constant critic of Donald Trump. She ran for president against him in the first Trump administration. This was when he was using these, slurs against her. I'm not going to repeat them here, but this is like this Native American slurs. I think it has a lot to do with the fact that she was the one that fought for this agency to be created because she cared enough about protecting people from large financial institutions that he could care less about, and he just closed it down. I think it had a lot to do with her. He withdrew from the World Health Organization. As you might imagine, in a globally connected world, the United States would like to have some sort of connection to the health management that's happening in other countries and coordinate what we're doing in the United States with other countries. So we're like making the most of our time and producing the best kind of results and, making sure that we're catching disease outbreaks in different places so they don't come to where other people are living. I say oftentimes, if you prevent AIDS from spreading in Africa, that means you're preventing AIDS from spreading in the place that you live, because eventually, if you let all of these diseases become unchecked and just run free, they will come to where you live. It's just a matter of time. We saw this years and years ago with COVID. You got one group of people in northern Italy that went on a ski trip, and the next thing you know, there's tons of people in Boston that are dying of COVID. So it's a global connected world, and the World Health Organization takes care to understand the medical states of the rest of the world in coordination with all the different countries. And of course, Trump wants to get out of that. He withdrew from the United Nations Human Rights Council. Of course he did. I believe this was in response to some work that they did in Gaza, and the Human Rights Council has spoke poorly of the Israeli government and the IDF on their brutalization of the Palestinian people in Gaza. Of course, we're out of that. And of course, UNESCO. This is the United Nations World Heritage stuff, right? This is places around the world, whether it's a museum or some archaeological site. UNESCO is producing the ability for people to go and visit these places and promoting them. And Trump has no interest in this. I think also there was some controversy regarding certain kinds of religious places. The Israeli government objected in some ways to some of these places that were promoted by UNESCO. So that's an unimaginably toxic list of things to do in such a short period of time. And the worst part about it is that that's just not complete. I mean, that was just some of the things that I had on the list. I mean, I think I could go on and on with the Trump meme coin and this fake deferred resignation program for federal employees, this reinstatement of the Mexico City policy regarding abortion information and NGO funding. He wants to take Greenland from Denmark. He wants Canada to be the 51st state, right? He wants to stop paying out the Inflation Reduction Act climate funds, which are already in law. All of these things are going on constantly. It's a huge overload at all times. I think we need a break. Okay, let's walk through a few more in detail because some of these things are already causing massive economic and social problems that aren't easily fixed. Let's talk about Eric Adams in New York City. Eric Adams is the mayor of New York City, Democratic mayor, and the Justice Department indicted him on some fraud charges. Basically, he was taking bribes from the country of Turkey to get their business through the New York City process faster. I think they were building some buildings and they wanted to get permitted easier and they wanted parking and like all this kind of like low end stuff that is complete nonsense. He went along with it and he got these buildings inspected quickly and he got these parking spaces and these, things done for the Turkish consulate people. In return, he took lots of money and flights and other perks that he was offered, and he got caught doing it, and he was indicted. Well, it turns out that Trump is just going to have the Department of Justice take those charges away. They're going to cancel the prosecution of Eric Adams. There was a court meeting just the other day where the government filed to remove these charges. And the judge said, hold on, wait a minute. You went through a process. You had a grand jury. You had publicly facing process to bring these charges. Why would you get rid of them? Are they no longer valid? Was there a mistake that was made? You can't just not prosecute someone because you think it's not a good idea once you've started this. So the court has to have some say in these things. The prosecutors, of course, have the direction of how they want to bring charges against a person or a company, and then working with the court, they execute those plans. But the court also has a responsibility to make sure that once something is in front of it, that it's adjudicated correctly. So you can't just say, okay, forget it. The court has to agree that you say, okay, forget it. And this is where we are today. So this is ongoing. There's a lot of complicated legal stuff that's happening. Basically, a third party is going to come in now and help the court understand why the government should not prosecute Eric Adams. Orders were given by Deputy Attorney General Emile Bové. This fallout from this saw dozens of resignations from career prosecutors who had clear principles of justice and integrity going into this prosecution. They just, they had to resign because none of those people were willing to go along with removing the Eric Adams charges. Well, I think that's enough. We have gone on for a while. I don't want to overdo this. I don't want to overload the listeners here like Trump is trying to overload the government. We have so much time to go until the next administration comes in here. Even if from the midterms we have a Democratic Congress, we will still have Trump in office, a Republican executive branch. Maybe things will get a little better, but we have a long way to go. And overloading the press and overloading the attention span of anyone out there that's interested in government or how it affects their job, like the overload is really breaking people. As Steve Bannon said at the beginning of this podcast, is they're just going to flood the zone with stuff because people have to make a choice. Am I going to worry about my house, my kids, my car, my job, my dog, my cat, whatever? Like, what is it that I have on my mind? How can I keep up with 10, 15, 20 different huge policy shifts at the government level every single week for months and months and months on end? It's not possible. I do this full time and it's not possible for me. You need a team of people like some of these outlets online are starting to check. I think the best one, if memory serves me, is the Mehdi Hasan new organization. They started making a diary of this. I apologize. I'll put it in the show notes. I forget the new name of that organization, but they've done a really great job with that. So go check this out. Okay. So lastly, very quickly, the lawsuits are working. There's been, I think, 100 lawsuits or something like this filed against all of these things that are happening that we went through here today. They are working. There have been injunctions put in place. There have been, orders to stop doing different things. There have been orders to return things to the way they were. There have been orders to explain what you're doing, and until you do, you're not allowed to continue doing it. there is a lot of legal activity that is happening right now, and it's working. You can see that some of these things are slowing down. They're still bad. They're still in effect. People's lives are still being changed because of it, but the lawsuits are working, and I think that's the best thing. Now, will they continue to work is the question, because most of these things are being adjudicated at the federal district court level. And when the final ruling of whatever is being adjudicated comes through, where the order happens, there will be an appeal. And it's when the appeals happen is when Trump has most of his power. A lot of the federal appeals court and, of course, the Supreme Court were handpicked by Trump. There's a lot of people in there that are going to follow what he wants. Eileen Cannon down in the Miami area that was managing the documents case, this classified documents case, she was clearly in the bag for Trump. She delayed that trial for a year and a half and then eventually just dismissed it on the fact that, the special counsel wasn't a real thing. And it's, go read about that. But that's what we're into at the next level. Once you get into the appeals process and once you get into anything to the Supreme Court, there are no guarantees, no standard idea of what's right or wrong. You don't know what's going to happen. So far the lawsuits are working. Let's see if it stays that way. Thanks so much for joining. I appreciate you listening. It's really great. I've gotten some feedback on the podcasts, and that's great. It really helps me continue doing this. I tried a little different today, a little more freestyle. Hopefully I won't have so many edits. Thanks for listening, and be sure to check out difficultopinions.com and also us on Blue Sky. Until next time, cheers.